First speaker, Padrahic, is, as he mentioned this morning, is Deputy CEO of TV Qatar, where you have been for 20 years, almost the entirety.
Our channel will be 20 years old this year, and we started off from a greenfield site. Original commissioning editor retired 2 weeks ago after 20 years sterling service. What I'm going to do now is something really old-fashioned. I'll list for you what I think were the attributes that McElroy brought, and the skills, and dare I say it, perhaps even the talents, that he brought to his task. Some of them are very old-fashioned concepts, but I'm still going to list them off for you. So he had to build, mentor, and then develop a sector. So the first thing you have to have is vision. The second thing he had and has is a mentoring ability, an ability to mentor people of lesser experience than himself. The third thing, obviously, is editorial judgment. If all 25 of you come in with very good projects and TG Qatar only has the funding for one, somebody has to take the decision that that project is the one we want. And that's tough, but that you need editorial judgment. And you have to be tough as well. Trust. For a station of our size and scale and delicate linguistic and cultural remit, people have to trust you, and you have to be trusted by both the creatives who are pitching at you, by your peers in the industry, and by your colleagues in management who are signing off the checks. And even though they're small budget, they're large sums of money. But that is really the key skill for our commissioning editors now, is identifying the talent, identifying the project, identifying the schedule slot, and identifying how the hell we're going to make this work because we're underfunded.
Quote, you don't have to come from London to be able to do network shows, I think is really relevant because it puts on the agenda that question of the power relations in production of television. And in particular, I think, for us in how we wanted to sort of contextualize but also to theorize talent, I think that that question of the power relationships and how they're negotiated is really, really important. Ruth, I think, has been a very successful investment for the BBC. It happened in the context of the BBC's own policy to move production outside of the London area. And that was in response to a lot of criticism that they were too centralised, particularly in the context of a devolved United Kingdom. What was actually happening here was an investment in an infrastructure that actually potentially was meaning that labour was mobile, was coming from parts of London, was being moved into Cardiff, almost in a kind of meeting a quota target way, but wasn't necessarily doing the job of sustaining and enhancing the talent base in Wales. So for some people, they felt entirely locked out of Ruth. And one of the things we talked about yesterday, I think, is if you make these really expensive capital investments in the build, it has to be used constantly. There's no space for any new productions. So even if they were getting commissioned, which they haven't been, there's a sense in which there's a kind of limit there. So it looks like a flagship. It looks like the BBC is doing something culturally important in that way.
As factual content commissioner, I commission approximately 70 hours of programmes per year, which is a lot. And that impacts on talent because there's a key word about deliverability. Every time you commission, you're taking a risk. You're giving ceremony, you're allocating hours, there's a place in the schedule for that commission, and you need that to be delivered on time, on budget, ideally with no questions, okay? And no headaches, no problems. And it's not always the case. I think it is good that talent leave. If the very best, it is good for them to go in whatever field, be it the creative industry or sport, because the prestige they bring to the country, to our people, they become fantastic, role models. So there are cases where we should be encouraging talent to move abroad. What we find is that people who do go on to produce, direct, act, present, on the whole, they're very willing and want to come back and work in Wales when they can, and they contribute. And again, it's that role model and the experience that they bring back. So what I try to do then is facilitate, encourage co-productions, introduce them to the companies, or the broadcasters, encourage them to go abroad. Because I do find the industry in Europe as a whole completely different to Britain. The producers, directors in Europe and all the countries I've been to are far more used to going across the borders, finding small pots of money in different countries and putting it together to make one big pot.
For me, one of the things that we need to draw out here is to understand how social capital might itself be being used by broadcasters as a mode of control. And what I mean by that is not just the sense that people have to prove that they are good people to work with through networks, but more actively that the sort of pressure to use your own social capital to realise it is a way in which the broadcasters can sort of devolve responsibility for sustaining talent. And so one of the talent requirements that started to emerge was a kind of almost cultural diplomacy. So the ability to translate the values, the histories, the career histories of Indigenous talent into terms that the kind of inward migration projects would be able to understand. Once people had started to work together, it seemed as though that problem could, to some extent, be overcome. Actually, the drama needs to represent the nation. It can't just be about moving production in to a place where the craft just happens to be a whole heap cheaper.